The morning sun cast a golden glow over the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean as the USS Resolute cut through the waters, heading straight into the heart of the Bermuda Triangle. Captain Richard Hayes, a seasoned Navy veteran with a stern demeanor, stood on the bridge, his gaze unwavering. He had heard the legends of the Bermuda Triangle, tales of ships and planes vanishing without a trace, but he had always dismissed them as nautical myths. However, the recent disappearance of the USS Valor and an Air Force reconnaissance plane had forced him to reconsider. Dr. Samantha Caldwell, head of the government-sanctioned paranormal investigation team, stood beside him, tall and composed, with sharp blue eyes that seemed to pierce through the veil of reality. She was known for her methodical and skeptical approach to the supernatural. Her team had been called in due to the unprecedented nature of the incidents. With her were Marcus, the tech expert, Elena, a gifted psychic medium, and Jack, an ex-Navy SEAL with a penchant for the paranormal. The USS Resolute wasn't alone. It was accompanied by the submarine USS Triton, tasked with exploring the underwater mysteries, and an Air Force squadron patrolling the skies. This mission was a joint task force involving the Navy, Air Force, and the paranormal investigators, all aware of the immense stakes. As the ship sailed deeper into the triangle, Dr. Caldwell gathered her team for a briefing. We're entering a region notorious for unexplained phenomena. Our primary objective is to gather data on the disappearances of the USS Valor and the Air Force plane. Stay vigilant and report any anomalies immediately. Marcus, already setting up his equipment, nodded. We've got state-of-the-art infrared cameras, EMF detectors, and EVP recorders. If there's anything out there, we'll capture it. Elena, closing her eyes to sense the energy around her, added, I can feel a presence. It's faint but growing stronger. Jack, checking his gear, smirked. Great. Just what we need. Ghosts in the middle of the ocean. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a malfunctioning compass. Captain Hayes frowned as the needle spun erratically. Looks like the stories are true, he muttered under his breath. Suddenly, a chilling voice crackled over the radio. This is Echo 1. We're detecting unidentified flying objects. They're not from this world. The Air Force pilot's voice was a mix of awe and fear. The radar showed blips that defied conventional aircraft movement, darting across the screen with maneuvers impossible for any known technology. Dr. Caldwell grabbed the radio. Echo 1, maintain visual contact, but do not engage. We need to understand what we're dealing with. As night fell, the USS Resolute was enveloped in an eerie fog. The deck was bathed in an unnatural glow, and the air grew thick with anticipation. Elena, her voice barely above a whisper, said, They're here. A shadow man appeared on the deck, darting across like a fleeting memory. The infrared cameras captured its movements, but it remained elusive. The crew could feel its presence, a cold, oppressive force that chilled them to the bone. Marcus played back the EVP recordings. Faint, eerie whispers filled the room. They're warning us, he said, his voice trembling. Captain Hayes, trying to keep his crew focused, ordered, Stay sharp, everyone. We've faced worse. Below the surface, the USS Triton explored the seabed. The crew discovered the wreckage of an ancient ship, not the USS Valor, but something much older. Barnacles and coral encrusted the hull, and strange symbols were etched into the wood. The discovery raised more questions than answers. Commander Lewis of the Triton reported, We've found something down here. It's not what we were looking for, but it's disturbing. The submarine crew encountered crawlers, shadowy, humanoid figures that moved unnaturally fast. They seemed to guard the wreckage, their eyes glowing with malevolent intelligence. The Triton's sonar picked up strange, rhythmic pulses emanating from the wreck. On the surface, the USS Resolute faced another threat. Skinwalkers, grotesque and shape-shifting creatures, emerged from the shadows. They attacked with ferocity, their forms constantly shifting between human and beast. The crew fought back, using a combination of conventional weapons and paranormal tools. The skinwalkers were resilient, and several sailors were wounded in the skirmish. Jack, leading the defense, shouted, "Keep them away from the equipment. We need to record this." Dr. Caldwell and Elena worked together to repel the entities. Elena's psychic abilities identified weak points in the skinwalkers' defenses, while Dr. Caldwell used an experimental device to disrupt their forms. The creatures howled in pain and retreated into the darkness. Amidst the chaos, a distress call came from Echo One. "Mayday! Mayday! We're going down. Unidentified objects attacking." The radio went silent. The Air Force plane was gone, another victim of the triangle. Captain Hayes, his face grim, addressed the team. "We need to find that island and whatever's causing this. It's our only chance to uncover the truth and survive." As they sailed deeper into the Bermuda Triangle, the sense of dread grew stronger. The team knew they were up against forces beyond their understanding. The enigma of the Bermuda Triangle was unfolding before their eyes, and they were about to confront its darkest secrets. The morning after the attack was a somber affair. The crew of the USS Resolute gathered in the mess hall, their faces etched with the strain of the previous night's events. Captain Richard Hayes stood at the head of the room, flanked by Dr. Samantha Caldwell and her team. The room was filled with an uneasy silence, the kind that comes after a brush with the unknown. "Listen up," Captain Hayes began, his voice firm. "Last night was unlike anything we've ever faced. We lost Echo One, and we have multiple wounded, but we cannot let fear cripple us. Our mission remains the same: find the source of these anomalies and bring our people home." Dr. Caldwell stepped forward, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the tension in the room. "We have gathered some data from the equipment, but it's incomplete. The phenomena we're encountering are beyond our current understanding. We need to gather more evidence and be prepared for anything." Marcus, the tech expert, chimed in. "I've reviewed the infrared footage. The shadow men and skinwalkers are real, but they seem to be avoiding direct contact with our equipment. We need to set up more traps and sensors to get a clearer picture." Elena, the psychic medium, added, "There's a strong presence here, something ancient and malevolent. It's drawing us in. We need to tread carefully." Jack, the ex-Navy SEAL, scoffed. "Careful? We're in the Bermuda Triangle chasing ghosts. Careful went out the window the moment we set sail." Captain Hayes cut in. "All right, enough. We have work to do. Dr. Caldwell, take your team and set up additional equipment. Jack, you and your men will provide security. We move out in 10. As the team dispersed, Dr. Caldwell approached Marcus. "Let's focus on the underwater wreckage. The symbols we found could be a clue." Marcus nodded. "Agreed. The Triton scans showed something unusual about the area. Let's see what we can uncover." The team made their way to the USS Triton. The submarine was a marvel of modern engineering, equipped with advanced sonar, deep-sea cameras, and a small crew of experienced submariners. Commander Lewis greeted them at the hatch. "Welcome aboard," he said. "We've been monitoring the wreckage site. It's unlike anything I've seen. Be ready for anything." As the Triton descended, the waters grew darker and colder. The eerie silence of the deep was punctuated by the hum of the submarine's engines. Dr. Caldwell, Marcus, and Elena gathered in the control room, watching the sonar screen intently. "There," Marcus pointed to a faint outline on the screen. "That's the wreckage." The cameras revealed an ancient ship, half buried in the sand. Strange symbols adorned the hull, glowing faintly in the dark water. As they approached, The crawlers appeared again, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Elena gasped. They're protecting something. Marcus adjusted the cameras. We need to get closer. Commander Lewis maneuvered the Triton closer to the wreckage. The crawlers didn't attack, but their presence was unsettling. Dr. Caldwell activated the EMF detector, which immediately spiked. These readings are off the charts, she said. There's a powerful energy source here. Suddenly, the submarine lurched. Alarms flared as the Triton was caught in a powerful current. The crawlers moved in unison, their eyes fixed on the sub. Hang on, Commander Lewis shouted, struggling with the controls. We're being pulled in. Dr. Caldwell gripped the console. We need to stabilize. Marcus, can you get a reading on that current? Marcus frantically typed on his laptop. It's not natural. It's like a vortex, pulling us towards the wreckage. The Triton's engines strained against the current. Outside, the crawlers watched, their expressions unreadable. The submarine creaked and groaned under the pressure. Elena closed her eyes, reaching out with her mind. There's something inside the wreckage, something calling to us. Dr. Caldwell nodded. We need to find out what it is. Commander, can we deploy the ROV? Lewis nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. Do it, but be quick. Marcus deployed the remotely operated vehicle, ROV, a small submersible equipped with cameras and manipulators. The ROV descended into the wreckage, its lights illuminating the interior. The symbols glowed brighter as the ROV approached. There, Marcus said, pointing at the screen. That compartment. It's different. The ROV's manipulator arm reached for the compartment. As it touched the door, a shockwave rippled through the water. The crawlers reacted, retreating from the wreckage. What the hell was that? Jack's voice crackled over the intercom. Dr. Caldwell's eyes widened. It's a containment seal. Whatever's in there, it's been locked away for a reason. The compartment door creaked open, revealing a dark, pulsating orb. The EMF readings spiked again, and the Triton's lights flickered. Marcus's voice was shaky. We need to get out of here. Now. Before they could react, the orb emitted a blinding light. The Triton was thrown backward, and the screens went dark. The crew was thrown around, struggling to regain their footing. Emergency ascent. Commander Lewis shouted, pulling the controls. We're getting out of here. The Triton surged upward, the pressure easing as they ascended. The crew held their breath, waiting for the inevitable impact. Finally, they broke the surface, the sunlight blinding them. On the USS Resolute, Captain Hayes watched as the Triton emerged. Get them on board. Now. As the submarine was hoisted onto the deck, Dr. Caldwell and her team stumbled out, shaken but alive. We found something, she said, breathless. Something powerful. Captain Hayes nodded. We need to regroup. This mission just got a lot more complicated. As night fell, the crew of the USS Resolute prepared for another sleepless night. The enigma of the Bermuda Triangle was revealing its secrets, but at a great cost. They knew they were only scratching the surface of a mystery that had plagued sailors for centuries. The tension on the USS Resolute was palpable as the crew regrouped. Captain Hayes convened a meeting in the ship's command center. Dr. Caldwell, Marcus, Elena, and Jack joined the senior officers and government representatives who had arrived in response to the escalating situation. Captain Hayes stood at the head of the table, a map of the Bermuda Triangle displayed on a large screen behind him. Ladies and gentlemen, we are dealing with something unprecedented. We've encountered entities that defy explanation. The situation is deteriorating, and we need a coordinated response. General Harris, a stern-faced Air Force officer, nodded. Our reconnaissance flights have picked up anomalies in the area. We need to get a clearer picture of what we're facing. I've dispatched F-22 Raptors to conduct aerial surveillance. Dr. Caldwell interjected, We need to understand the source of these anomalies. The wreckage we explored holds a powerful energy source, but we couldn't get a full reading. We must go back. Marcus added, "Our equipment is ready, but we need more data. We should deploy sensors at multiple locations to triangulate the source." Elena, the psychic medium, looked pale. There's something ancient and malevolent here. It's not just one entity, but a confluence of dark forces. The more we disturb it, the stronger it becomes. Jack leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "So, what's the plan? We go back down there, risk more lives, and hope we get lucky?" Captain Hayes' gaze was steely. "We don't have a choice. We need answers. General Harris, can we coordinate with the Air Force for a multi-pronged approach?" General Harris nodded. "We'll have drones and aircraft cover the skies. Naval forces will secure the perimeter. We'll also deploy underwater drones to map the area in greater detail." Dr. Caldwell stood. "Let's prepare for deployment. We need to be ready for anything." Hours later, the USS Resolute buzzed with activity. Dr. Caldwell and Marcus worked feverishly in the lab, calibrating equipment and reviewing data from the previous dive. Elena meditated in her quarters, seeking to connect with the entities they faced. Jack and his team checked their gear, ensuring they were ready for another encounter. In the air, F-22 Raptors soared over the Bermuda Triangle, their pilots scanning for anomalies. On the water, naval ships patrolled the area, ready to respond at a moment's notice. Underwater drones sent back live feeds, revealing more of the ancient wreckage and the strange symbols that adorned it. As the sun set, casting an eerie glow over the ocean, the team gathered on the deck. Captain Hayes addressed them. "This is it. We're going back in. Stay sharp and stick together. We've got backup if things go south." The Triton was lowered into the water once more, its crew steeling themselves for what lay ahead. As they descended, the waters grew darker and colder, the silence almost oppressive. The underwater drones led the way, their lights piercing the murky depths. Inside the submarine, the atmosphere was tense. Marcus monitored the sensors, noting the increased EMF readings. "We're getting close. The energy levels are spiking." Dr. Caldwell watched the sonar screen, the outline of the wreckage growing clearer. "There it is. Let's get those sensors in place." The ROVs deployed, carefully positioning sensors around the wreckage. As they worked, the crew could feel the oppressive presence growing stronger. The symbols on the hull glowed brighter, casting an eerie light. Elena, eyes closed, whispered, "They're here, watching us." Suddenly, the submarine jolted. The crawlers reappeared, moving with a purpose. The shadow men followed, their forms barely visible against the darkness. "We've got company," Jack said, gripping his rifle. Dr. Caldwell's voice was calm. "Hold steady. We need to finish this." The ROVs completed their task, the sensors now in place. Marcus reviewed the data, his face grim. "The readings are off the charts. Whatever's down here, it's powerful." As the Triton ascended, the shadow men and crawlers followed, their eyes glowing. The submarine broke the surface, the crew scrambling to secure the sensors and review the data. On the deck of the USS Resolute, the team gathered around Marcus's laptop. "These readings are incredible," he said. "The energy source is massive, and it's linked to the wreckage. We need to analyze this further." Elena's eyes were wide with fear. "It's not just the wreckage. There's something else. Something even older and more dangerous." Captain Hayes frowned. "What are we dealing with?" Elena shook her head. "I don't know, but it's been here for centuries, maybe longer. And it's angry." As they spoke, the sky darkened. The F-22s reported strange sightings, shadowy figures moving through the clouds, unseen forces disrupting their instruments. On the water, the naval ships reported similar anomalies. General Harris contacted the USS Resolute. We're picking up increased activity. Whatever's happening, it's intensifying. Captain Hayes nodded. We need to regroup and analyze the data. We're dealing with something beyond our understanding. Dr. Caldwell reviewed the sensor data. We need to triangulate the source. If we can pinpoint it, we might be able to neutralize it. Marcus agreed. We have enough data to start. Let's get to work. As night fell, the team worked tirelessly, piecing together the puzzle of the Bermuda Triangle. The enigma was unraveling, but with each answer came more questions. They knew they were racing against time, facing forces that defied logic and threatened to consume them all. The USS Resolute became a hub of frenetic activity, with teams working around the clock to analyze the data and prepare for the next phase. They were on the brink of a discovery that could change everything, but at what cost? The Shadow Men, crawlers, and other entities were closing in, and the team knew that the next encounter would be their most dangerous yet. The enigma of the Bermuda Triangle was revealing its secrets, but the price of knowledge was high. The USS Resolute was a hive of activity as the crew prepared for their next mission. The air was thick with tension and anticipation. Captain Hayes called a meeting in the ship's command center, where key personnel gathered around a large table strewn with maps and data printouts. We've identified a central point of the anomalies, Marcus began, pointing to a spot on the map. It's deep underwater, near the wreckage site. We need to get closer and deploy additional sensors to triangulate the energy source. Dr. Caldwell nodded. We have to be careful. The entities we encountered are becoming more aggressive. We need to protect the equipment and ourselves. Elena, the psychic medium, looked pale but resolute. I sense something ancient and malevolent down there. It's not just a source of energy, it's a gateway. Captain Hayes turned to General Harris, who was overseeing the aerial and naval operations. General, we'll need full support. Can we count on the Air Force and Navy? General Harris nodded. We have drones and aircraft ready to monitor the skies. Naval ships will maintain a perimeter and deploy rescue teams if necessary. We've also prepared a squad of diverse equipped with advanced gear. Jack, the leader of the ghost hunting team, spoke up. We're ready to go back down. We've upgraded our equipment to handle the increased activity. Let's do this. The Triton submarine descended once more into the dark depths of the Bermuda Triangle. Inside, the atmosphere was tense as the crew monitored the sensors and prepared for whatever lay ahead. The underwater drones led the way, their lights cutting. ChatGPT through the murky water as they approached the coordinates Marcus had identified. The crew's faces were illuminated by the glow of their screens, each displaying critical data and live feeds from the drones. As the Triton neared the anomaly center, the submarine's sensors began to spike. Energy readings are off the charts, Marcus said, his voice tight with anticipation. Whatever's down there, it's powerful. Dr. Caldwell adjusted his headset, his eyes never leaving the monitor. Prepare for electromagnetic interference. We need to maintain communication with the surface at all costs. The submarine shuddered as it passed through a dense field of energy, the lights flickering momentarily. Elena closed her eyes, focusing on the malevolent presence she had sensed earlier. It's here, she whispered. Something is watching us. Captain Hayes steadied the Triton, his hands firm on the controls. Stay sharp, everyone. We're not alone down here. The underwater drones approached the ancient structure, revealing more details of the temple-like formation. Strange symbols and carvings adorned the walls, glowing faintly in the dark water. The team exchanged uneasy glances as the eerie sight confirmed Elena's fears. Deploy the additional sensors, Hayes ordered. We need a full scan of this area. The drones released a series of small, high-tech sensors, which floated towards the structure and began transmitting data back to the Triton. The readings were chaotic, with spikes and fluctuations that defied conventional explanation. These symbols, Jack said, examining the live feed, they look like ancient sigils, possibly connected to occult practices. This could be the gateway Elena mentioned. Suddenly, the submarine was jolted by a violent impact. The crew clung to their stations as alarms blared. "We've got company," Marcus shouted. Entities closing in on all sides. The shadowy figures from the temple surged towards the Triton, their forms shifting and twisting in the water. Elena felt a cold dread settle over her. "They're trying to stop us. They don't want us here." Hayes maintained his composure. "Prepare defensive measures. Jack, get those EMF emitters ready." Jack and his team activated the emitters, which emitted powerful electromagnetic pulses designed to repel the entities. The shadow figures recoiled, their forms flickering, but they did not retreat. "We need more power," Jack gritted, adjusting the settings. "These things are stronger than before." Outside the Triton, the drones continued to scan the structure, sending back increasingly disturbing data. Marcus's eyes widened as he interpreted the readings. This isn't just a gateway, it's a prison. And whatever's inside is trying to get out. Dr. Caldwell's face turned pale. "We have to seal it. If those entities escape, they could wreak havoc on the surface." Hayes nodded. "Agreed. Marcus, can we overload the sensors to create a feedback loop? It might destabilize the energy field and close the gateway." Marcus hesitated, calculating the risks. "It's dangerous, but it might work. We'll have to time it perfectly." "Do it," Hayes commanded. "We don't have another choice." As Marcus worked to reconfigure the sensors, the shadow entities intensified their assault, battering the submarine with supernatural force. Elena felt the malevolent presence growing stronger, its rage palpable. "We're running out of time," she warned. "It's getting closer." The Triton shuddered again as Marcus initiated the feedback loop. The sensors began to overload, emitting a high-pitched whine. The energy readings spiked, and the temple's symbols glowed brighter, pulsating with chaotic energy. "Brace yourselves," Hayes shouted. "This is going to be rough." A massive shockwave erupted from the sensors, spreading through the water and slamming into the temple. The shadow entities screamed and writhed, their forms dissolving into the darkness as the energy field destabilized. The structure began to collapse, the symbols fading as the gateway sealed itself. The submarine was rocked by the turbulence, but Hayes managed to steer it clear of the debris. The crew watched in awe as the ancient temple crumbled, the malevolent presence dissipating with it. "It's over," Marcus said, his voice trembling with relief. "We did it." Elena nodded, though her expression remained haunted. "We've closed the gateway, but the Bermuda Triangle still holds many secrets. We can't let our guard down." Captain Hayes steered the Triton back towards the surface, the crew breathing a collective sigh of relief. "We'll debrief and analyze the data," he said. "But for now, we need to get back to the Resolute." As they ascended, the team reflected on their harrowing ordeal. They had faced the unknown and lived to tell the tale, but they knew their mission was far from over. The Bermuda Triangle's enigmas were vast and dangerous, and their journey into the abyss had only just begun. The Triton submarine descended further into the inky blackness of the Bermuda Triangle, its lights illuminating the eerie underwater landscape. The crew inside was on high alert, their faces etched with determination and fear. Captain Hayes kept a steady hand on the controls while Marcus, Dr. Caldwell, and Elena monitored the equipment. "Captain, we're approaching the anomaly site," Marcus announced, his voice steady despite the rising tension. "All sensors are operational." "Good," Hayes replied, his eyes scanning the dark waters ahead. "Stay sharp, everyone. We don't know what we're up against." As the submarine neared the designated coordinates, the sonar began to pick up unusual readings. There's something massive down there, Dr. Caldwell said, his eyes widening as he analyzed the data. It looks like a structure, but it's emitting an energy field unlike anything we've seen. Elena closed her eyes, her face contorting with concentration. I can feel it. There's a presence here, something ancient and malevolent. We need to be careful. The submarine's lights revealed a large, ancient-looking structure on the ocean floor. It resembled a temple, with strange symbols etched into its stone walls. As they got closer, the sensors went haywire, detecting spikes in energy levels. Deploy the drones, Hayes ordered. Let's get a closer look. 2 underwater drones were released from the Triton, their lights illuminating the temple's entrance. As the drones approached, the temperature inside the submarine dropped suddenly, and the crew could see their breath misting in the cold air. What's happening? Jack asked, his voice tense. Something's interfering with our systems, Marcus replied, furiously typing on his console. We're getting massive electromagnetic interference. Elena's eyes snapped open. They're here. The entities, they're trying to stop us. Suddenly, the submarine was rocked by a powerful force. The crew held on as the Triton was dragged toward the temple by an unseen force. On the monitors, the team could see shadowy figures emerging from the structure, their forms shifting and contorting. Get us out of here, Dr. Caldwell shouted, his voice filled with panic. Hayes tried to steer the submarine away, but the controls were unresponsive. We're stuck. Brace yourselves. The shadowy figures began to penetrate the submarine, their forms slipping through the walls like smoke. The crew could feel an oppressive weight pressing down on them, as if the air itself had turned malevolent. Elena stood up, her face pale but resolute. We have to confront them. They won't stop until they destroy us. Jack grabbed his ghost hunting equipment and handed out devices to the crew. Use these EMF meters and thermal cameras. We need to document everything. As the shadow entities closed in, the crew activated their equipment. The meters spiked wildly, and the thermal cameras revealed the entities' forms in stark detail. The shadowy figures moved with unnatural speed, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. We need to reach the temple, Elena said, her voice calm despite the chaos. It's the source of their power. If we can disrupt it, we might be able to stop them. Hayes nodded, his face set in determination. Let's go. The crew donned their diving suits and exited the submarine, moving cautiously toward the temple. The water around them was cold and oppressive, and they could feel the entities watching their every move. As they approached the temple's entrance, the shadow entities became more aggressive. One of the creatures lunged at Dr. Caldwell, its form twisting and stretching. He raised his EMF meter, and the entity recoiled, hissing in anger. Keep moving, Hayes shouted. We don't have much time. They entered the temple, the interior illuminated by the glow of their lights. The walls were covered in strange symbols, and the air was thick with an otherworldly energy. At the center of the temple was a large, glowing orb, pulsing with a sinister light. That's it, Marcus said, his voice awed. The source of the anomaly. Elena stepped forward, her hand outstretched. We need to disrupt the energy field. It's the only way to weaken them. Before anyone could react, the shadow entities attacked with renewed ferocity. Jack swung his EMF meter, the device emitting a high-pitched whine. The entities shrieked and recoiled, but they were relentless. Keep them back, Hayes shouted, his voice hoarse. Elena reached the orb, her fingers brushing against its surface. A shockwave of energy blasted outward, knocking the crew off their feet. The shadow entities howled in pain, their forms flickering and dissipating. It's working, Marcus shouted. Keep going. Elena concentrated, pouring all her energy into the orb. The temple shook, and the water around them churned violently. The shadow entities screamed and vanished, their presence dissolving into the darkness. Finally, the orb shattered, and the oppressive energy lifted. The temple grew silent, and the water calmed. The crew lay on the floor, breathing heavily, but alive. "It's over," Hayes said, his voice filled with relief. "We did it." As they made their way back to the submarine, the crew felt a sense of triumph. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but they knew the Bermuda Triangle's mysteries were far from over. The Enigma had been disrupted, but its secrets still lurked beneath the waves, waiting to be uncovered. Back on the surface, the Navy and Air Force teams awaited their return, ready to assist. The rescue teams had their hands full with the wounded and missing, but the crew of the Triton knew they had made a difference. "We've only scratched the surface," Marcus said as they climbed aboard the rescue ship. "There's still so much we don't understand." Elena nodded, her expression thoughtful. "But we took a step forward. The Bermuda Triangle's secrets are vast, but we won't stop until we uncover them all." Captain Hayes looked out over the horizon, where the sun was beginning to rise. "We've won this battle, but the war continues, and we'll be ready for whatever comes next." As the rescue ship sailed away from the site of their harrowing encounter, the crew of the Triton knew they had faced the unknown and lived to tell the tale. The enigma of the Bermuda Triangle remained, but they were no longer afraid. They were prepared to face the darkness again, armed with